Who 10 years ago would really have believed that today you would be navigating a route in the cloud and sharing your progress on social media whilst curating a pitch to win new business, all from your phone? In recent months, even those with a real passion for mobile tech would argue there is a lack of excitement and innovation in smartphones. Today, refinement rather than radical shifts in style and technical capability is the order. This then explains, despite technical and hardware differences, the Sony X Compact. Successor to the Z5 Compact of 2015, it offers little to tell them apart. Despite the vast number of smartphones that exist, one space in the market that is relatively untouched still is the compact size phone with flagship specs, for those who simply don't want a phone with a screen in excess of 5 inches, but want the raw power and possibility that comes from the best hardware. This void has been filled by Sony with previous compact devices, and more recently by Apple with the SE. Sales confirm that there is a need for devices of this ilk, but there are few that tick the boxes, often as a result of compromise to achieve the size. It is these compromises that drive many to question whether going for a larger phone is the best option to get performance, even if it means giving up on the comfortable form factor. So how do the specs of the X Compact look? Key specifications are shown on screen now. As I mentioned earlier, the X Compact looks quite similar to the Z5 Compact, so you will not be wowed by the design, but there are some subtle design cues that have been carried across from the Xperia X range, with slight curvature to the display edges helping narrow the bezel. You have the typical front-facing camera, notification light, SIM and micro SD card tray, and headphone jack. Notable are the front-facing stereo speakers and the new USB Type-C connector. Mounted on the right edge is the power button cum fingerprint scanner, and it's worth noting too just how good the fingerprint sensor is. Is this not the best place for a fingerprint reader? Screen face up or down, by the time you have the X Compact in the ready-to-use position, the screen is unlocked. The placement of the volume keys is contentious. I do not believe it is the ideal location. They can be awkward to move your thumb to. The left edge would make more sense. Making up for this is the dedicated camera button. In the hand, the Compact is comfortable. Like an old friend, I feel right back at home. At 9.5mm thick and 135 grams, it's reassuringly chunky without being excessive. Solid and robust, sure to survive 2 years of constant use, the glossy plastic finish, inspired by the ceramic texture, is softer to the palm but a fingerprint magnet. The Z5 matte finish and the iPhone SE metal body looks and feels more premium in the opinion of the Clove staff. It is also worth noting, unlike previous compact devices, the X Compact is not IP rated. In many respects, I hope the X Compact had a 1080p Full HD display for the sake of progression, but alas, it's only 720p. That said, the reality of everyday use is that the 1080p on a screen of just 4.6 inches is essentially wasted. For web browsing, replying to emails and checking social media, the higher resolution would have little benefit. I find myself watching quite a few videos on YouTube through my mobile, and rarely did I feel I really needed more detail, especially when I was getting over 4 hours of screen on time. The colours were bright and punchy thanks in part to the X Reality for mobile picture enhancement, the triluminous display and all the other technical wizardry that goes on in the background. For those with a desire to, you can control the colour temperature of this screen too if you like. Double tap to turn the screen both on and off is present, as is the ability to orient the home screens in landscape too. The X Compact is powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon 650 processor, which is supported by 3GB of RAM and 32GB of internal storage. With over a week's testing, my experience was on the whole good, with no real lag or performance issues. Out of the box, the Android install is quite heavy at over 10GB, given that it feels like Sony have actually reduced some of the add-ons. The whole experience feels a little lighter, but with retention of some useful features. Gamers can rejoice in having connectivity to PlayStation, meaning you can play games normally reserved for your PS4 right on your mobile. Gone is Simple Home, which reduced the amount of content on screen with larger, clearer icons, ideal for those with limited sight or wanted something a little bit easier to manage. You can easily organise home screens, add widgets, folders and change the themes with ease. For new smartphone users, a series of ongoing tips and tricks to help you get more from the device. This is on top of the Xperia transfer for simple migration from one phone to another. More advanced functionality is hidden within the settings, Do Not Disturb being one example. Great if you do not want your mates calling you in the middle of the night, but you want to ensure close family can get hold of you. Being an Android device, you have all the benefits built in, such as access to all of Google's apps and services, the Play Store for all your apps and media, and more. Easily add email accounts and other profiles to the phone, even have multiple users if you choose. Where some brands are looking to do away with headphone jacks, the trusty friend is present here, but the micro USB port of years past has been replaced with the considerably more user-friendly USB Type-C connection. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, NFC, GPS, 4G, it has it. It would have been nice to see the inclusion of wireless charging in the X Compact as another option, but sadly it's not present. The X Compact has high-res audio support, digital noise cancelling, digital sound enhancement engine, and front-facing stereo speakers. What does all of this mean to you and I as users of the phone? In short, it means you get a very good all-round audio experience that excels if you have high-res headphones and stream or store high-res audio files on your device. Even if you're streaming audio or playing back MP3 files stored on your device, the X Compact will look to enhance these with the DSEE technology. The stereo speakers on the front are not the loudest, but they are clear and well balanced. If you are taking a few minutes to watch a video or listen to a podcast, the speakers here should do you proud, providing the environment is not too loud. If you have ever seen or handled a Sony smartphone within the last few years, you will likely be aware of all the tech they build into the camera to help capture sharp photos in any conditions. The 23 megapixel resolution camera has Sony's Exmor RS for mobile to achieve higher resolution and sensitivity, Bions for mobile to reduce noise and produce true colour reproduction, along with an f2.0 24mm G lens to capture more light. Add to this steady shot with 5-axis stabilisation, quick launch and capture, and you should be able to capture stunning images in almost every situation. When launching the camera, you're presented with 3 key modes, the first of which is the default Superior Auto mode, which is the simple point and shoot mode which many of us use. Intelligent algorithms detect the scene and pick up the best setting for what it detects. Where once you were limited to 8 megapixels in Superior Auto mode, you can now shoot at up to 23 megapixels. Manual mode is for those who want to take more control. You get 5 times clear image zoom with a maximum zoom of 8 times within the camera too. In all modes there are the additional settings available to control things like the save location, geotagging, grid lines, HDR and more. On from this are the additional camera apps such as Sound Photo, Creative Effects and more add-on modes. These allow you to use the camera in innovative ways, perhaps have a little more fun and get some nice effects. Given the X Compact is sort of a squished XZ, it's a shame that the front camera is not the same 13 megapixel, but 5 is generally plenty good enough for most use case scenarios. Another shame is that the video recording on the X Compact tops out at 1080p and not 4K like the XZ. The image results are good, but not exceptional. Results can be a little mixed, with very well lit shots coming out nicely, but those with less light looking a little dull and washed out. This was most apparent with images that included the sky. Things like cloud formations were basically lost. Clarity and sharpness are not as good as the competition. This is perhaps personal opinion, but I prefer the slightly more saturated colour. I need to remind, of course, that I'm not using a finished production version, so this may improve. Focus speeds have improved from devices of past, but up against the likes of Samsung's S7 and the Sony is left behind a little. One person's use case will always be different to another, and for the week or so I've been testing the X Compact, it has not undergone what I would call typical usage. However, a few on-screen time tests and even with the sample product with non-final software achieved around 4.5 hours at full brightness, which I think is commendable for the 2700 mAh battery built into the Compact. I would suggest a typical day was leaving me with around 25 to 30% come late evening. This is based on no power saving technology being switched on, and of course Sony offering stamina and ultra stamina mode, which can really extend the usage time by curtailing features and performance. A neat feature Sony have implemented is battery care. Essentially, this software add-on is designed to increase the battery lifespan by reducing the time the device is charged over 90% for a long time. You know how many of us leave our phones on charge overnight? This feature looks to learn from your habits and alter the charge in the device so that it reaches 100% just before you need the phone, rather than spending 4 hours a night being pushed more charge when it's already at 100%. To work effectively, the X Compact does need to see a bit of a routine. Routine is not always possible, so the X Compact does boast quick charging when used with Quick Charger UCH12W. The X Compact is for those who want a phone that can be held and used in one hand and does not breach the 5-inch size that many now do. If you like a big screen, stay away. Existing compact users are not going to be blown away by the X Compact, unless you still use the Z1 or Z3 Compact. There are not enough new wow features or improvements that really make you want or need to upgrade unless you are due or want a new phone. The iPhone SE has more initial design appeal, and the X Compact seems to have lost a bit of that extra punch that made the compacts so popular. This may sound a little critical, but this is typical of many phones today when it comes to upgrades. What you will gain, however, is a solid, comfortable phone that just works and does so well. For me, and I am sure many others, having a smartphone that I know I will get on with and just works goes far beyond any fancy features that I may not use. Yes, fancy new features can impress, but they quickly wear off for many of us. If I may compare the X Compact to a friendship, if you like compact models, it is an old friend you haven't seen in a while. Within minutes, you just gel again and everything is rosy.